spent the better part of 45 minutes with YouTube yesterday, engaging in a back and forth of questions and answers that have led me to become even more convinced of the truth that I had already assumed to be true. More on that in just a moment. However, in order to attempt to satisfy those who clicked on this video and so not to disappoint in hopes of avoiding the long list of comments claiming my content to be clickbait, please enjoy today's bad news. Banks across the country are secretly freezing accounts while others are slashing available credit card limits down to just 1% of their previous highs. Banks are closing accounts. The U.S. government is preparing to default on its debt, and payment obligations and personal information that we were told and tricked into believing was private and secure is anything but. SIM swapping and doxing are two new terms that I have added to my vocabulary, but I will save that for you guys for a little bit later in this video. Yet equally bad news has been shared from leaked reports of a major bank giving private financial data to the FBI for anyone in D.C. on or around January 6th. Dan Bishop, a Republican representative in North Carolina, said Bank of America gave a list to the FBI of anyone who used Bank of America credit or debit cards in the D.C. area between January 5th and January 7th of 2021. Regardless of whether or not they participated in the events of January 6th. During remarks at a hearing of the committee on Thursday, the North Carolina Republican referenced whistleblower testimony that the bank had voluntarily turned over credit card transactions for anyone who was in the D.C. area around January 6th. The report said the FBI seemingly worked with a major financial institution to receive, without legal process, financial records about Americans who use credit or debit cards to purchase hotels, flights, or firearms in close proximity to January 6, 2021. This invasion of the privacy of American citizens in this manner is decidedly concerning. What has been described as astonishing behavior by Brian Moynihan-led and huge Wall Street private banker and financial institution, Bank of America, is truly heartbreaking to say the least. Trust has been lost, and we all should seriously take into consideration what they are capable of and preparing to do moving forward. These are the same banks in private, closed-door talks with government officials, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, and other controllers of wealth and power about what will be the decided fate of our economy, our dollar, and our survival in just a short period of time. The West Virginia State Treasurer Riley Moore said that financial privacy is a cornerstone of individual liberty, and that big banks and big government colluding to violate the privacy of American citizens without a warrant is dangerous and unacceptable. Like if you agree. Now, Bishop said this is rotten to the core and that the weaponization of the federal government must end. But I'm honestly not holding my breath waiting on that to happen. Because the bad news does not stop there. Insane and borderline psychotic Democrats are further ruining the lives of many and doing so at a much younger age, which is all the more concerning. For example, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre made the bold claim that states which have banned sex denial surgery and other gender rejection care require an all-hands-on-deck response. Jean-Pierre said, there are more than 600 pieces of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation out there, and that a few hundred of them are anti-trans communities, and that matters because we have to call that out. And we've never seen this level. It's historic in the number of pieces of legislation. Now, please don't be fooled by her or their lies, because at the root of all this is one thing: money. I can assure you that if this woman was not in this position and receiving a direct deposit from her government employer every pay period, that she would be singing a much different tune. This is complete and total nonsense. Or perhaps the response is historic, because it seems like the left is attempting to convince the world that child mutilation is good and changing genders is real for the first time in history in masses. Oh, come on. Can you give me a fucking break? She even went on to say that she has met a lot of parents of trans kids in the past couple of months who have told her these devastating stories, whether they're in Texas or Oklahoma or wherever they are, saying how they now have to seriously consider leaving their state to protect their child. That's something that we have to call out and continue to be very clear about. These are kids. These are our kids. They belong to all of us, end quote. Now, that is exactly what the left would want you to believe. But there is no better response than that of the one left on Twitter by writer Tim Meads, where simply put, kick rocks. In a nutshell, my kids are my kids. Your kids are your kids. Likewise, child mutilation is to healthcare as burning your kid's hand on a stove is to discipline. It's abuse. That's why laws banning the practice are needed. Yet we still see there are so many out there who are looking the other way and ignoring the truth that there are real problems in this world that need to be addressed. For instance, Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona tweeted, "Teachers know what is best for their kids because they are with them every day. We must trust teachers." Come on, give me a fucking break. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott had a pretty concise response to that collectivist crap by saying that parents know what's best for their kids in a post uploaded to Twitter, and they are the most important voice in their child's education, period. Now, I would like to agree with that statement, but I also must do so with a grain of salt. There are so many delusional parents out there who have bought into some total garbage and are drinking the Kool-Aid, and they may not have their child's best interest in mind. Sound judgment and logical thinking seems to be a lost art these days. But the bad news all adds up to one very big problem, and that is the money driven behind many of these ridiculous ideologies and irreversible and life-altering and damaging decisions has taken too much control over morals and the simplest concept of the greater good. We've been down this road before, and Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson were just a few to make out like bandits in the night, further increasing the wealth gap by multiple billions of dollars. And if you thought that that was intense, just wait until you see how much money and profit is centered on gender reassignment and transitioning treatments, medications, devices, prosthetics, clothing, apparel, and the list goes on and on. But I can't place all the blame on them. No. The truth is that these lies have to be told. Misinformation must be spread, and to do so, you need a very large podium and a very loud bullhorn, metaphorically speaking. So, ladies and gentlemen, YouTube has now entered the chat. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I spent the better part of over 45 minutes with YouTube yesterday, engaging in a back and forth of questions and answers that have ultimately led me to become even more convinced of the truth that I had already assumed to be true. YouTube, much like the rest of this country, and apparently the better part of the entire world, is completely lost, confused, and misguided, and with their money, power, ability, and control. They're on an almost seemingly unstoppable rampage, a wrecking path to wipe out the greater good that still exists in this world today. And in conclusion, by the time I was done learning about YouTube's plans moving forward and how they viewed themselves, the company and the platform, it was made abundantly clear as to what the biggest problem and worst news of it all was. For specific reasons, I do not want to go into great detail here on this video about my findings, my thoughts, and my opinions and predictions for the future. I will save that for Patreon, where I'm free to express myself without bias and socialist-like dictatorship, censorship, and vague community guideline rules, without fear of being canceled, demonetized, suppressed, banned, or deleted if my opinions don't align with their plan to reset the entire world as we know it. However, I will still share some clips from another YouTube creator who can tell you the truth from his own experience. A 2+ million subscriber content creator and truthsayer who just gets it and is not afraid to say all the things that they don't want you to hear. It is sad and unfortunate that this is the way things turned out, but I guess it is what it is. And now that we know the real truth, What are we going to do about it from this point on moving forward? Ladies and gentlemen, from the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh. Thank you all for watching, and I look forward to talking further with you all over on Patreon. Enjoy the clip. Take care.
Well, I should have known that last week would be interesting. It began in an unusual way. On Sunday, I was leaving church with 3 of my kids in tow, and as I was walking towards the car, I heard someone shout my name from behind me. And I get flagged down by fans on the way out of church pretty frequently, as you might expect. The church-going crowd is my core demographic, so I didn't think it was anything out of the ordinary. And the guy ran up, shook my hand, started making friendly small talk, but then his tone changed suddenly, and he told me that actually he thinks that my work has a terrible impact on the world. He said that this church, the one we just came out of, is a place of love, not hate, and I'm not welcome there. Now, I responded in no uncertain terms that he can't speak to me that way in front of my children and that he should be ashamed of himself. He turned around and walked hurriedly away, and that was the end of the conversation. Now, I hoped that my kids who were standing there hadn't been paying attention maybe, and maybe didn't realize what the guy said to me. I was hoping perhaps it didn't register on them. But when we got to the car, my son started to cry, and he asked me why that mean man said those things. And I explained to him that there are people in this world who don't like it when you speak the truth and when you try to do what's right. Their hearts are shrouded in darkness, and they hate the light, just as the Bible says. Now, I tried to act unfazed for the sake of my kids, but the truth is that I was extremely angry. I don't care what you say about me or to me, but you've crossed a line when you make my boy cry. But it was an important lesson for him to learn and for me to relearn in preparation for the week ahead. So on Monday afternoon, I was informed that YouTube was demonetizing my channel. And this was the first step towards a possible permanent demonetization or banishment from the platform entirely. YouTube keeps its rules intentionally vague. That's the way they play the game. They'll penalize you for violating their policies, and yet they won't explain exactly what their policies are. So the company gives itself the license to single anybody out for whatever reasons they decide. They accused me of engaging in hateful conduct, which supposedly ran afoul of both their community guidelines and their ads guidelines. They already took the step of deleting a number of my offending episodes, which are gone now from YouTube, which is something that, again, they did on their own. And now they're taking away our ads, which is a penalty of more than $100,000 per month. That's what it adds up to. Now, they provided us with just 3 examples of my infractions, and these aren't all of them, they said, but they told us about 3. And they wouldn't tell us why they were infractions, but they said that, they told us what 3 of them were, and they said all 3 of them had to do with Dylan Mulvaney, coincidentally. And they all seem to involve the crime of quote-unquote misgendering. So, for example, one of the violations occurred when I referred to Mulvaney as a, quote, guy. That was a violation. And what you should know is that we were not flagged by the algorithm. Okay, it's not one of those algorithmic glitches. And this does not appear to be some low-level decision at the company either. Yet, a path to remonetization is available. It seems that we can get back into YouTube's good graces, get our monetization back by simply respecting preferred pronouns and refraining from offering any meaningful critiques of gender ideology. In other words, all I have to do to get all that back is forfeit my integrity and betray all of my deepest held principles. That's it. Now, not to skip ahead, but I can tell you right now that my answer to that offer is not only no, but hell no. The next day, shortly after I finished eating dinner with my family, I noticed that my Twitter account had been logged out on my computer. And I tried to log back in, but the password didn't work, and that's when I knew that I was hacked. So I grabbed my phone to call my team about it, but my phone had stopped working at the precise moment when the Twitter hack happened, and that's when I knew that the hack went far beyond Twitter. As we would soon find out, the hacker had pulled off a maneuver known as SIM swapping, and that's a thing where the target's, the person who's being targeted, your phone number is transferred over to a SIM card that the hacker controls. And once they have your number and your SIM card, they can access almost anything. And this hacker did. He got into my text messages, my DMs, my emails, everything. Leftists and trans activists were giddy. They were cheering on the attack. They begged for my private messages to be released. They said that I deserved to be the victim of this federal crime. At least one journalist openly solicited my stolen information, put out his email address, and asked for my stolen DMs and my stolen information to be sent to him, to be emailed to him. The hacker then did an interview with this same journalist who works for the publication Wired. The hacker apparently showed the journalist my tax documents, showed him some of my pictures, some of my old emails. The article directly quotes one of my private emails, though it contained nothing salacious or even mildly interesting. In fact, it was a friendly exchange I had with Steven Crowder 10 years ago. And this made it into the Wired article for some reason. The only interesting revelation in the article is that the hacker says that he had help in pulling off this hack from an unspecified, quote unquote, insider. And we have independently, as we've been tracking this down, we've independently found other evidence which also points in that direction, that there was help from an insider. However exactly he did it and whoever helped him, and we will find all this out, I promise you, it resulted in something much worse than the mere headache of somebody posting dumb tweets from my account. This was a total violation of our privacy, and if I'm being completely honest with you, it was one of the worst things that my family has ever experienced. I didn't sleep that night. I was up with our security team, our tech guys, lawyers, trying to put out a dozen fires all at once. Through the following day, we had people on the phone with Microsoft, Apple, Google, Twitter, my cell phone carrier, the FBI, local law enforcement, etc. It was a nightmare, even with all these resources available to me. The fact that we can just get on the phone with all these different companies and try to solve this problem, even with that, it's a nightmare. I can't imagine what this kind of attack is like for people who aren't so fortunate. You know, if you're stuck in a situation where all you can do is call 1-800 numbers, then that's going to make it all the worse. On Wednesday, with no sleep, I flew to the University of Iowa to deliver a speech in front of what turned out to be a massive sold-out crowd, a lot of energy in the room, which gave me enough of a boost to get through the event without passing out on stage or, descending into incoherent Joe Biden mumbles. Outside, there were throngs of protesters taking to the streets. They were stopping traffic. They were blocking the exits out of the event. They also dumped thousands of marbles in the hallway outside of the auditorium where the event was taking place in hopes of, making people slip and fall and causing serious injury to hundreds of people as they're walking out. Fortunately, that plan failed. So to summarize, it was a difficult week, but also fully in keeping with my experience over the past year or more. Especially since my film, What is a Woman, came out, we have been doxxed, threatened, stalked, harassed, almost constantly. The threats became severe and frequent enough shortly after the film came out to necessitate 24-hour armed security in our home. Last night, there was a Reddit post which went viral from somebody calling me a homophobic Nazi and saying that I should be murdered. The poster said that he's, quote, tired of me getting away with this. And when he says getting away with it, what he's talking about is that I'm getting away with expressing my beliefs openly. He's tired of that. And he said that there needs to be consequences, quote unquote. The consequences, he specifies, should involve me being bludgeoned to death with a baseball bat. And the thing is that this is not the sentiment of just one random weirdo on Reddit. In fact, somebody posted something similar to Twitter a few weeks ago saying that I should be tortured and killed, and it got tens of thousands of likes and thousands of supportive comments. There is a wide consensus on the left that I deserve to be killed, and they have made that point abundantly clear. But the good news is that we're not taking any of this lying down. I'm going to be working with law enforcement. I am working with law enforcement right now to ensure that the person who hacked into my phone and anybody who granted him access is punished to the full extent of the law. We are going to sue everybody involved. I can't say much more about it right now, except that many different wheels are currently in motion. And if the people who did this aren't nervous right now, they should be. On the YouTube front, as long as they make affirmation of gender ideology a prerequisite for posting my show on the platform, I will not post my show on the platform. But I also will not allow myself to be banished into obscurity off to some internet ghetto where nobody will find my content. You see, big tech, this is the choice they want us to make. They want me either to surrender my principles or become irrelevant. And they'll be happy with whichever of those two options I choose. Either one, fine with them. Which is why I choose neither. And we're trying something new as well. Starting today, every episode of this show will also be posted in full on Twitter, which is now the most powerful free speech platform in the world. And it seems like the place where this show belongs. If you follow our channel on YouTube, you can still find plenty of content that we'll make specially for you. We'll still post clips from the show so we can reach new audiences with our message. But we're not going to give YouTube our full show so long as the situation remains as it is. The point is that we're not going to capitulate, but we also aren't going to scale down and become obsolete. Instead, we're going to be bigger. We're going to be more innovative. We're going to reach more people in more ways on more platforms. That's our response. And this is just the beginning. I'll have more to announce soon. Also, we've been talking with Congress. YouTube shouldn't be allowed legally to hold its users to standards of conduct that it refuses to properly explain. It's not just, this is what people need to understand, it's not just that they target conservative voices, which they do, and that's bad enough on its own, but that they do it in this incredibly underhanded way with intentionally ambiguous rules that are enforced unevenly according to their opaque policies that they often seem to be making up as they go along. The only way this changes is if the people running YouTube experience a sudden and mysterious bout of integrity, or if the law forces it to change. And I'm not betting on the former, so instead I'll fight for the latter, and I will take the fight all the way to Capitol Hill. Now, there is a point at the end of this whole saga. The point is that, one of the most important points anyway, is that the term culture war is no mere metaphor. It's certainly not anymore. We are up against people who have no interest in debates, no interest in discussion. If you oppose them, they will not engage with your arguments. They will simply try to silence you and ruin you. There will be no rebuttals, except for the ones that they issue in the form of censorship, death threats, and worse. The more that they perceive that you are a threat, the more that they will work to destroy you and everyone associated with you. That's the way it works. But this should not dissuade us. Okay, we shouldn't be discouraged by the viciousness of our opponents, but motivated by it. It couldn't possibly be more clear who is on the wrong side and who is on the right side. This is about as black and white as a cultural divide can possibly get. There is one side that hates the truth, rejects the truth in principle, and wishes total destruction on everyone who speaks it. All you have to do is choose the side that is not that side. Now, it may require courage to take that kind of stand, but at least you'll know where to stand. There's not any confusion about this. As for my ongoing ordeal, or ordeals, I should say, I didn't tell you all of it so that you would feel sorry for me. Okay, pity is the last thing that I want. I chose this line of work. I chose to be in this fight. I went into it with my eyes open. Okay, I knew what I was getting into. I may get hit with a curveball on occasion. I may be introduced to new concepts like SIM swapping, for example. But mostly, I'm getting exactly what I expected from the vicious, bloodthirsty rage mob and its leaders in big tech. And it has not dissuaded me even slightly. I still will not back down by an inch or compromise at all. I've told you many times that I would rather be dead than surrender to these people, and I meant it. So to all the people who are sending me death threats and posting my home address and hacking my accounts and trying to blackmail me and threaten me, giving away my personal information, mass reporting me to get me deplatformed, and all the rest of it, I want you to know that nothing you have done or will do or could do will ever make me shut up. It will never happen. None of your schemes have worked or can ever work. It is all futile. Your efforts are hopeless. The truth is the truth. And I will never pretend otherwise. I am not here to make a martyr of myself. I don't want any of the good guys to be martyrs. I want us to win. And we will.